sometimes people just don't listen, do they? They think that they know the answers already. They steer a conversation to their own agenda. You walk in a room, you tell someone something, and they think that they know better than you. They think they know all the answers. And we've seen it in the response to the coronavirus. So there are some people who think they know all the answers. There's some people that think, well, we've done this before. We know what's going on here. There are some people who are saying different remedies. There are some people who are saying, but the flu's worse than this. There's some people that are saying we're overreacting. There's all sorts of things going on. We get information from the government who tell us the measures they're taking, and we think, well, I'll follow that one, but I won't follow that one, and I'm not sure that one's good enough. And the voices begin to shout out, you've got it wrong, government, you've got it wrong. And then the truth, which is in there, even though we disagree sometimes, it gets lost in the shouting. And we go through everything that is said with a fine tooth comb. I don't know whether you've seen on the news after everything that has been said, everything is overanalyzed, and it makes us more confused than when we heard the first thing said. And then we get the fake information. We really need to be checking our sources on the information we're sharing about this virus, because there's some very strange stuff going around, like the fact that you can drink a glass of water and it will wash out the virus. That is not true. That is not good science. We make assumptions from our own experience. Well, I've only got a little cough. I'll be all right. I can go out and about and do all the things I need to do. No one I know has got the virus, so I should be all right. I'll be fine. I can hug, I can kiss, I can do anything I want. I was away last week, as you may remember, on a retreat, and there was a group meeting in the retreat place who were actually from the NHS. I don't know what kind of group they were. There was a woman on a table 2 tables away who was proudly telling her table that she had a cough and a bad chest, but she was okay. She could be there. She could share the toaster with everyone else. And you do wonder where this information is coming from. We don't listen to what we're being told. We don't listen to the experts, and that's shown in our reactions. We twist everything to our own agenda. Well, that's really going to inconvenience me a little bit too much, so I will stop there. We need to stop twisting things to our own agenda. We need to listen to what is going on around us, and we need to respond accordingly. We need to listen to God and what He's saying in all of this. How does our response to what is going on in the world at the moment glorify God? We need to form some kind of Christ-centred response to this. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do, because there is so much going on. But we need to do that, and maybe this parable might help us just think about that. This parable was always in the plan, which is why I'm sticking with it. But just bear with me, because I think it does have some things to say into this current crisis. It's a parable all about gifts. It's a parable all about what God has given us, what God has entrusted with us with. The master is meant to represent God, and the servants are meant to represent us. How can we use what God has entrusted with us with to the best of our ability? The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. How can we use that? It's in Matthew 25, which we started to look at last week. Matthew 25, which tells these stories of waiting for the end times, waiting for when Jesus comes again, and what we should do as we wait. So last week we looked at the 10 bridesmaids. Some of them were ready, some of them weren't, and it got to the point where those who were ready couldn't pick up those who weren't. It was a parable all about being ready, being prepared, actually living in the moment, knowing it could be a while, but being prepared for when Jesus comes again. Before that, there is a parable that we haven't looked at about the faithful and the unfaithful servant. The unfaithful servant doesn't behave very well, and there's a message in there about waiting responsibly. So we wait responsibility, we make sure we're ready. And here in this parable, we make sure as we wait that we're productive, that we don't focus so much on what's going on at the end that we get stuck in the middle, that we don't focus so much on what's to come that we don't live the life that we're called to now. It's a story that the listeners would have understood, as it was not unusual for servants to get some responsibility with the money of the master, and these 3 servants have been entrusted with a lot of money. 1 talent is about 15 times a day's wages. And they needed to make wise decisions with this money that the master had entrusted them with. And it's a metaphor for what we have been entrusted by God with. What do we do with the things that God has given us? What do we do with the resources and talents that God has given us? And you'll notice that the master distributes according to ability. So the one he knows who will make the most money, he gives the most money to. And maybe he was just giving that 3rd servant a chance, going, just show me what you can do. Just show me, because I don't know whether you've got this yet. God knows us. He knows how much we can manage. He knows what our health is. He knows what our age is. He knows how much we can manage. His expectations, though, are high of us. He doesn't give us too much, but he has high expectations as we're called to be hard-working disciples. He expects us to work as being Christians. He expects us to work and serve in the world. We believe all about Christ to be true, that he has died, he has risen, that he will come again. That is a reflection on how we live and how we use our gifts. The way we live should all be about the advancement of God's kingdom. It should be all pointing to God's kingdom. Jesus said the kingdom of God is near. And as followers of Jesus, we say the same thing. We imitate him. We say the same thing. Look, the kingdom of God is near. There is more than is here. And we need to live as if the kingdom of God is already here. But how do we do that? How do we do that in this current crisis where we're unsure what is going on, where everything changes almost every hour, where there is so much sorrow in the world and so much anxiety in the world? How do we do that? Well, we have many different responses we can take. We could ignore what is going on and think it is an overreaction. Some people are doing that. We can panic. We can run around like a headless chicken and panic buy and make a toilet roll cupboard. We can hide away and we can hibernate and not engage with the world. But a lot of us will be at the point where we want to do something, but we don't know what we can do. Maybe other reactions that you've had. God has given us things. He's given us gifts. He's given us skills. He's given us experience, and we can use those things in this time. But the question is, what do we do with them? Well, the 3rd servant was scared, wasn't he? He was stuck to the life he was living in, and he stuck to what he perceived to be the easiest and the least risky option. What are you going to do with this stuff to keep it safe? And I'll bury it. I'll put it in a safe. I'll make sure that what I have is safe, and I won't think beyond that. If we hide away and hibernate, if we go and run away to a desert island, which is what I actually have wanted to do this week, then we can't do anything with the opportunities that God has given us, that God continues to give us every day through this. Can we be so careful sometimes that we miss the point? Can we be so careful that we just miss that God might work through us? Burying our treasure, burying what God has given us. We hide it under the mattress and we succumb to the fear that we feel. A behaviour that is too risk averse, it leads to us doing nothing, and that is not what we're called to do. I've got responsibility in this crisis to use what God has given us to be all who God has called us to be. Then now that may mean that we have to do things differently, and we'll work with that. That may disrupt family life, and we'll work with that. That may mean working in a different way, but even though we're working in a different way, through us, God is still working. There's a tension, isn't there, between being sensible and being all who we are called to be. We've got to live in that tension. But we've got to endeavour to be as much as we're called to be with this current climate that we're living in. We have a room here full of gifted people who are talented in many ways. What has God given you that you can use now? We all need to be asking that question. Perhaps he's given you the gift of prayer. Well, you know what your job is. Perhaps he's given you pastoral skills. Perhaps you're really good on the phone. Perhaps you're really good at making sure people have the stuff that they need. No, now is the time to really hone those skills, because people will need that at the moment. Perhaps you have really good admin skills and you can pick up some of the stuff that's going to be dropped because of different things happening. Perhaps you have a car and you can go shopping for people who are isolating. Perhaps you have the ability to calm a room in an instant. We need you right now to do that. Perhaps you have a cool head in a crisis. You're going to come to the fore. Perhaps you have professional skills that might be useful at this time. Perhaps you have nursing skills or medical skills or counselling skills or some other kind of skill. How are you using them today? Hibernating is not a Christ-like option, even if we're isolating. Even if we're isolating, we can still engage with others and support them through this. We need to use this time to develop our talents and not hide away. Don't be so cautious you become selfish. Our immediate thought in times of crisis is often ourselves. The very things that we're being asked to do, though, are to protect others, hand washing, going in isolation, making sure we don't buy too much, that kind of thing. But how do we go above and beyond in that? How do we go even further? Don't bury what you've been entrusted with, but use it to glorify God. This crisis would challenge our expectations and our attitude towards God. We want to use this time to grow in Him. We need to be productive in our growth and in our discipleship. The third servant wanted to hold on because he was worried about getting it wrong and his master's reaction when he got back. Doing nothing with what God has given us is what he got wrong. Doing nothing with what the master had given him is what he got wrong. Doing nothing with what God has given us is wrong. It's easy. It's like we'll end up being like the lukewarm church in Laodicea, talked about in Revelation. Yeah, whatever. We'll just keep on keeping on. Our attitude matters. We know who God is. He is loving, He is just, He is merciful, He is our strength. In our response to this crisis, we need to remember who God is. He is not mean. He is not uncompassionate. He never lets us down. He is with us. He's in the hospitals treating the patients. He's with us as we have fear. He is with us. And that is what we need to talk about. A truthful understanding of God will help us deal with this. Use this time to right yourself right with God. And then your reactions and your growth and gifts and talents will be a natural progression from that. Approach this crisis with trust in God, knowing that God invests in us, embracing chances to spend more time with Him, and ask Him how you need to change. It's going to be a time of self-seeking, a time of just working out who you are in God. This crisis will challenge our attitude to the whole world. When we bury stuff, when we don't use this stuff we have to serve the world we live in, we let the world down. If I'm okay, everything will be okay, is not a godly attitude. God doesn't work in that way. We are in end times, and that's not because of the current crisis. That's the definition of the time between Jesus ascending and coming again. But we need to not focus so much on the end that we miss the now. The servant focused solely on being okay for the master's return. We don't focus solely on that, because actually he wasn't okay for the master's return because he hadn't done anything the master had asked him to do. We need to look at Jesus for clues as to how to live now. We need to look after the vulnerable, grow in grace, lean on him. Christ-centered living in difficult times is not about escaping the world's problems, but it's about using what we have been given to walk with one another in the struggles of life, using our gifts to show a way through the anxiety and fear towards hope. So we've got to walk with Christ in this. We need to be wise in the use of our God-given gifts. No burying it in the sand. We need to serve according to our circumstance. If we're out and about, serve the best we can while we're out and about. If we're isolating, serve the best we can while we're isolating. Be productive in what you do. Be productive with the gifts that God has given you. Be careful, but be conscientious of the life that Jesus calls us to. We need to live now. It may not feel like we can live through this, but we can. We need to. We need to live now and plan for the future. Serve him now. Be spontaneous and reactive to what is going on around you. Don't stockpile all the stuff. I'd ask you to not stockpile all the stuff because it takes away from others and it causes greater panic. Get enough, but don't go wild. Think of those who don't have enough and share your resources with them. Think of the food bank. Think of the work we do in the community. That still needs resourcing today. And don't give up as you wait. Be productive as you wait. And remember Christ. Follow him now. Learn more of him now. Depend on him now, because he is our strength. He enables us to work through this. Be prepared for what is coming, but live today the best you can. Plan for the future and know there is more beyond what we face right now. And that more is good. The crisis will pass, but God is eternal. Live like this is true and use what you've been given. Listening to those who are in the know, but also listening to what is going on around you, and ultimately listening to God.